We'll get started. I don't see Spencer on, so if you could give him a call, Ashley, while I do the introduction, that'd be great.
Sure, no problem.
Good morning, everybody. This is Panama Bartholomew with the Building Decarbonization Coalition, and welcome to our sometimes monthly, sometimes twice a month, Building Decarbonization Coalition Presents webinar series. Today we have a really great webinar. I think I put it into the context or put it into the platform of our startups webinar series. This one is Electrify Your Home Without an Electrical Panel, without an electric panel upgrade. We have Spencer Harrison from NeoCharge coming in. That's going to be talking about the exciting developments over at NeoCharge and what they're bringing to the marketplace. NeoCharge is a member of the Building Decarbonization Coalition, and they produce fantastic products to help you not only electrify your house, but also get your transportation electrified as well, while controlling the costs through panel upgrades. The Building Decarbonization Coalition is a collection of different sectors that all work on building decarbonization. It's organizations and companies that represent the utility sector, energy providers such as community choice aggregators, manufacturers of heating equipment, the design and construction community, local governments, and non-governmental organizations. Thank you to everybody on the call today who's a member of the coalition. Your support is very valuable so that we can bring efforts like this to the marketplace and the webinar series and other pieces of change to the building decarbonization market. We work on both policy and market solutions to bring about the total elimination of emissions from the built environment. Back in January of last year, we released a roadmap for decarbonizing California's buildings. Very short document, don't be intimidated, feel free to download it from our website. It's focused on the attention span of a policymaker, so it's only 12 pages long, but it talks about what we think is necessary in order to completely decarbonize California's buildings. And in there, we lay out some goals that we think are gonna need to be met on a policy level in order to be able to achieve total decarbonization by 2045 or sooner. That includes requiring through the code zero emission buildings for residential by the 2025 building code and for commercial by the 2028 building code. And that through retrofit programs, we're able to ratchet down emissions from existing buildings on a path to 100% elimination by 2045. Inherent in that is going to be phasing out the sale of fossil fuel appliances. And so we also adopted in the roadmap goals so that by 2030, we're not selling any more fossil fuel appliances in the state, with the recognition that many of these appliances have a 15-year life expectancy, and you can't be getting to carbon neutral by 2045 if you're selling these appliances and they're in operation after 2030. Behind these numerical goals, we also recognize that in order to overcome all of the barriers within the building decarbonization space, we needed to reach those goals by carrying out these 5 activities you see on the screen. Number 1 was building awareness across all players within the space, policymakers, implementers, and consumers. Ensuring that building decarbonization was providing a good value proposition for customers. This includes a focus on upfront capital costs, as well as making changes in rates to make them more electrification friendly. Number 3, ensuring that building decarbonization provides a better value proposition for installers, builders, and designers than fossil fuel buildings. Number 4, making sure there's a supply chain that is robust and ready and barriers are out of the way. And today's webinar really focuses on one of the key barriers to residential electrification. And then number 5, making sure that all of our policies are aligned to meet our other goals, so that our affordable housing policies, our energy efficiency policies are not out of alignment with our clean air, clean energy, and climate policies. So this webinar series nestles directly into goal number 1, building awareness. This is not the only activity that the coalition carries out to help build awareness around the benefits of electrification and decarbonization, but it's one of our key tools that we use to really bring some of the top thinkers, some of the top doers, top companies and organizations that are working at the cutting edge of building decarbonization to the masses, to be able to expose them to you all and for you to hear from them about what they're working on, how you can incorporate it into your own efforts. As I said, we hold these webinars about anywhere from once a month to twice a month. Upcoming webinars, Rheem, the water heating and space conditioning manufacturer, has just released a brand new, incredible heat pump water heater, the ProTerra. We're going to have them come in and talk about it on August 20th. Same time, same place. So Save Today, Save Tomorrow is going to be hearing from Kevin Clark from Rheem. And you can go to our upcoming events link there to hear more about that and be able to engage with Kevin about this exciting new 5th generation heat pump water heater from them. So just some logistics. Everybody is muted on this call. We have over 100 participants now. Please ask any questions via chat and we will ask them for you at the end of the remarks. Or we might unmute you to allow you to ask them. This webinar is being recorded, including the chat, so keep it clean, folks. And then members of the coalition can access the recording on our website after the fact, but only members of the coalition can access the recording. So that's just one of many great benefits available to members of the coalition. And if you're not a member yet, we have incredibly affordable rates for being a member, and we encourage you to check us out. Here's the website if you'd like to join us. We'd love to have you in the family and taking part in all of our different activities that we're working on to try to bring about a complete elimination of emissions from the built environment. So with that, I will stop sharing my screen and ask Spencer to start sharing his screen. Spencer Harrison is the CEO of NeoCharge. They're a fantastic startup off of California's Central Coast. They are focused on one of the primary issues holding back building and vehicle electrification in California, in particular, that of undersized electrical panels. And so Spencer is here to lay some wisdom down and talk about what they're doing at NeoCharge to overcome this issue. Spencer, we're really excited to have you on. Please take it away. And good luck out there.
Thank you so much, Panama. Appreciate it. Great introduction. So just to reintroduce myself, my name is Spencer Harrison. I'm the co-founder and CEO of NeoCharge. And just briefly, Panama touched on it, but we're making home electric vehicle charging cleaner, easier, and more affordable. And we're also helping with building decarbonization. So today, what I wanted to do was start off, give you a little background of where we started and why we started, then go a little bit more into how we applied to building decarbonization. And then at the end, I'll open it up for questions and any suggestions that you guys may have. So I'll get right into it. Let's see. So when we first started, we actually started as a senior project out of Cal Poly San Luis Obispo. And what we had found is we went out and we talked with hundreds of electric vehicle drivers, and we found this major issue with the adoption of electric cars. And we found that really for your electric car, many times to install charging, it's really difficult. If you're a homeowner, you have to hire the electrician. The electrician comes in, they rewire your home, and then they install one of these 220-volt outlets so you can charge your car. But many times there's not enough space in the panel, which is really expensive and many times costs thousands of dollars, which is a huge pain for electric vehicle drivers. On the other end of the spectrum, there's home renters who they can't even hire an electrician. So that's a huge barrier for them to be able to drive an electric car. And this relates directly to the decarbonization of buildings, because many times, you do have to get that panel upgrade to put in one of these appliances, to put in a heat pump that is many times going to require this panel upgrade, and it's really expensive. So we identified this problem, and what we did is at this point in time, we saw that electric vehicles were really starting to take off all these automakers were putting money into electric vehicles, and we saw many different sustainability policies being put into place across the nation. So we're set to really help reduce this problem so we can help drive electric vehicle adoption. That's really where we started. So our solution was, what if we could create a really easy solution that made it so you didn't have to pay thousands of dollars for a panel upgrade to drive your electric car? And what if you didn't have to, even hire the electrician? So if you're a home renter, you could plug it in, you can get that easy charging access. So that's what we created, the NeoCharge Smart Splitter. So what the NeoCharge Smart Splitter does is it plugs into an existing 220 volt outlet that you may have in your garage. Let's say you have an appliance in your garage. It could be a heat pump, it could be a dryer, it could be a water heater. You plug our device in and you can share the outlet for charging access. So you can plug in your appliance on one side, your dryer or appliance on one side, and your charger on the other side. You can get easy home charging access. So what's great is for home renters, they can plug it in, they can take it with them when they move. They don't have to worry about rewiring. And if you're a homeowner, you don't have to rewire your home or hire that electrician or get a panel upgrade, which can save thousands of dollars on installation. On top of this, we wanted it to be very safe. So we've gone through some rigorous testing for the last few years. We officially have our UL safety certification, which has been a huge milestone for us. Now, there are many different use cases, and I'll touch more on the appliance use case in a little bit. But there's the appliance smart splitter for plugging into your appliance and sharing that for electric vehicle charging. There is the dual car smart splitter, so you can plug it in and charge 2 cars with one outlet. So you don't have to get that panel upgrade. And generally how it works is we've designed it to make sure that you're not going to have to worry about any safety or any sort of overloading in your home. So, your car will be running. When you run your dryer, it'll pause your car charger automatically, so you don't overload any breaker in your home. And that's done, it switches back to charging your car automatically, so you can get the charging that you need. So we have been testing this for the last few years, and we have many different customers that are very satisfied with our smart splitters. We found that on average, we've been saving our customers $2,500 on panel upgrades. It took them less than 5 minutes to just plug in and install the charging they needed. They didn't have to go out and find the electrician and schedule an appointment. And 100% of them were highly likely to recommend us to a friend because they were so satisfied with the solution we provided them. Now, how does this apply to building decarbonization? I touched on this a little bit, but our solution is very key for this main panel upgrade issue. If we want to decarbonize all these homes, it's going to be really expensive if we need to upgrade every single panel. And we're set out to not only help with the adoption of electric cars where we first started, but as we've started learning more and more, and after meeting Panama and understanding this huge issue with the residential sector and decarbonizing the residential sector, we realized that we do provide a really key solution for the decarbonization of buildings. Now, when you're trying to put in a water heater or a heat pump or even an induction cooktop to decarbonize your home, that many times will require these installations that can be expensive and not even an option for home renters. So with our solution, we provide an easy solution that can really enable this electrification of homes. And that's why we're here today. That's why I wanted to raise awareness and let you all know of this solution. And at the end, hopefully even get some more suggestions from you all and answer all of your questions. So just generally how we've gotten to market thus far is we're working with solar companies, we're working with EV charging companies, we are working with a handful of utility companies, and later this year we'll be getting on Amazon. Here's some more of our partners. I wanted to point out a few of the utilities that we're working with. We're doing some awesome pilots and with Portland General Electric as well as SMUD. We do have some other partners that we've been really close with, including the LA Clean Tech Incubator, who's been instrumental with providing us resources and connections to getting into the clean tech space. And of course, the Building Decarbonization Coalition. So it's been awesome being a part of the coalition, and we really appreciate you having us here today. Generally, I wanted to provide a little overview of what other solutions there are out there. There are a few other things that you can do. There's a product called the Dryer Buddy, which is this guy that creates this 220-volt splitter in his garage. It's not safe. It doesn't have this UL safety certification. So that's a really big one for us, is we wanted to provide that safety for EV drivers and for home owners and renters. It is easy to install and it has auto switching, but it's not portable. Then there are electricians, which are safe, but not always easy to install, as I explained earlier. And then there's a simple Y splitter, which is just a wire split into 2 outlets. But it's dangerous because it'll allow both your outlets to run at the same time, which could cause a fire in your home, and it's pretty dangerous. So for us, we have the first solution that really encompasses all of this, including safety with our certification, easy installation, auto switching. It's portable, so you can even take it with you on the go. We also have a smart grid software that we're making. So what is that? Generally, our vision has always been to help decarbonize this planet, and there's different ways we can do that. There's transportation. You can look at it from the grid aspect. You can look at it from the residential aspect. For this software, our vision, what we're developing right now, is a way to connect utilities and electric vehicle drivers to synchronize charging for better times of the day, to save electric vehicle drivers money and to help them use cleaner energy. And on the other side, helping utilities with managing the electrical grid. So we're really excited about this, and I wanted to just give you a high-level overview of what that is. So how can you help? How can we help you? Well, there's a few different things that I wanted to point out and really get all of your suggestions on. And after this, I'd love to open it up to questions or anything you guys would like to talk about and discuss. For us, any help that you can provide us to connect us with utilities or community choice aggregators to help electrify the residential sector, to really decrease these installation costs. We would really love to work with more of these stakeholders to provide our solution. Like I said, we're trying to help decarbonize the transportation sector as well as the residential sector, and connections and suggestions are really important for us to really get into where we want to get. So I'd love to open it up to that. Any suggestions that you guys have for best integrating into any of these types of programs would be very much appreciated. And I also am really curious of where you guys see that maybe where our solutions could best fit into building decarbonization, or in general, where you think we best fit. So I would like to open it up to questions. And I also wanted to say that if anyone is interested, I'd be happy to send you guys a discount code and hook you guys up with a discount. If you guys are interested, feel free to email me or text me or call me if you would like. So thank you guys all for listening, and I'd love to open it up to questions.
Great, thank you, Spencer. Very exciting, and there's some real excitement on the chat as well. I'm gonna there's a pretty healthy chat around heat pump water heaters, and there's a question about being able to, how would you be able to split a water heater with an induction cooktop? And Steve Schmidt in here has already done it, and what he did is he ran a 220-volt from kitchen to nearby outside closet with a heat pump water heater. And there's a follow-up question to that about, so can heat pump water heaters, can they be turned off willy-nilly like this? Is there any sort of issues with turning off heat pump water heaters, whether that be to charge your car or to run your cooktop?
Definitely, I'd love to touch on that. I'd actually be curious because Steve has 2 of our smart splitters. If he is able to be unmuted and even just maybe talk about how it's been for him, I think that would be really beneficial.
Yeah, Steve, let's unmute you. And where are you? Steve Schmidt, can you unmute yourself at *6 or unmute?
There he is. Hey, Steve. Oh, I think you might still be on mute.
You might still be muted, Steve. You're unmuted on Zoom, but maybe not on your phone.
Okay, how about that?
There it is.
Perfect.
Fantastic. Yeah, this has worked great. So the priority is set by which plug you use on the NeoCharge. So there's a primary outlet and a secondary or a slave outlet. So in our case, the induction is on the primary, and it's just plugged in with a normal dryer plug. It always gets priority. If both try and run at the same time, the induction gets the energy. Shutting off the heat pump water heater has not been a problem. It's a Rheem, I can't remember the model number, but it's a 50-gallon new heat pump water heater, and it comes right back on with the exact same settings and the schedule. And so that's worked great. Same thing with the two EV chargers. Turning them off has not been a problem at all. They come right back on. I'm happy to take any
So
questions.
Steve, follow-up question there about, so a lot of heat pump water heaters are hardwired, but did you do an aftermarket plug on there, or how'd you plug it into the NeoCharge?
Just using a dryer plug, and our town inspector said that was perfectly fine.
Okay, fantastic. Henry Siegel, I'd like to unmute you so you can ask your questions about other creative splits.
Sure.
So,
can you hear me?
Yep.
Great. I was just wondering what other kinds of splits are practical to do. For example, could you split it with a heat pump water heater and a heat pump space heater? And how would that work? How would you give priority to which?
That's a great question. So we actually haven't used a space heater on our smart splitters yet, but I guess it would be depending on the power settings and what the amperage would be. That could change a few things, but most likely it's going to run pretty smoothly. What we do is we make sure that there's a certain rating maximum amount of power you can take from the outlet before it's going to be unsafe. So we'll make sure that you don't go over what the outlet's rated for. So let's say you can have 40 amps maximum, and you have 20 amps on this heat pump and then 20 amps on the space heater. You wouldn't be going over the threshold. So that would be okay. And it would be up to you whether or not you'd want priority on one or the other. But we don't have anyone using it with the space heater yet. I think that would actually be a really interesting setup and kind of pilot or demonstration to do.
Great. Thank you, Henry. We have a question from Al Wong. It says, I live in the San Francisco Bay Area. How is the electricity generated? I think it's coal. Is electricity really greener? And I'll take that one, Spencer. So
Yeah, go ahead.
California has a very clean grid compared to a lot of other states. And it's a mix of mostly natural gas, renewable energy, and large hydroelectric energy. In 2019, just under 65% of all the electricity generated came from carbon neutral sources. So that being renewables, large hydro, or our one last nuclear plant operating. So from an emissions perspective, we have a relatively clean grid. The Sierra Club just recently did a study that looked at for every one of the 48 lower states, did it make more sense to, from an emissions perspective, from a cleanliness perspective, to power your furnace and your water heater off of gas, or to use the electricity provided to your average household and run your heat pump water heater and space heating off of electricity. And what they found is that in all 48 states, it's actually better because of the high levels of efficiency of heat pumps to run your heating off of electricity rather than off of gas. And I will put a link to that study in the chat in just a second. So a question from Brendan McEwen. Is there any issue with cutting off power to EVs? And how about cutting off power to heat pump water heaters? Would that lead to any potential operational issues depending on the model?
We haven't seen anything thus far. I mean, yeah, I mean, what Steve was saying with his water heater, I guess it could depend on the model. And this is something, you know, we're still pretty early on testing every single model. And we're open to doing that just to see exactly how that works. But from what we understand with some of our customers that have been using it with their heat pump water heater, we haven't found an issue. And then with electric vehicles, there really hasn't been an issue as well.
Okay, great. Have you had much communication with any manufacturers about it?
Yeah, we are in talks with a few different manufacturers, car and EV charging companies, and we're working on some different ways to integrate directly with the cars, and so that's going to be something we're also looking forward to, is figuring out how we can best communicate directly with either the charger or the car.
Great. Amruta, I'm going to unmute you so you can ask your question. Amruta, are you still there? Amruta wanted to ask, how does the splitter decide on the priority, charging an EV versus a water heater or something else? And does it use ML or AL?
Just to clarify, what is ML and AL?
I was hoping you would know.
I was machine learning
There you
or an artificial. I was wondering if it uses machine learning. You know, I was just wondering about the priority.
I see. Okay. In terms of the priority, there are two different outlets. One of them is the primary, and one of them is the secondary. And the primary gets the priority, and then the secondary, you know, that'll get shut off if the primary outlet is trying to draw the power. So basically the primary outlet gets the priority. Depending on what you would like, most likely you would probably want the water heater on priority if you have an EV on it, but it's really up to you of whichever one you want to have priority. And we do have some logic within our within our smart splitters, because we do have this software component. So there are some algorithms that we're developing for switching and that sort of thing.
Great, thank you. I did just post the Sierra Club report in the chat if folks want to see that. Larry Waters, one of Northern California's top electrification contractors, says he wants one today. Budget numbers, please. So we'll put you guys in touch after the presentation.
Yeah.
Tanya, I'd like to unmute you. You got a bunch of great questions in here, Tanya. So could you unmute yourself to ask about the smart grid functions and any other follow-up?
Yeah. Hey, Spencer, this is great. I had a couple things. One is just, you know, you've got that small group of us all over the West who have these really old homes in particular on the retrofit. And so like I have 100 amp service, so there just aren't that many 220 volt circuits to actually use. So in a case like that, then I'm assuming that you would use the splitter to, I mean, you can speak on that. Like, and I saw somebody else though, Jim Lutz was talking about the 110 volt heat pump water heaters, and I'm kind of like clapping really effusively in the background. My second question though to you, Spencer, is how well can this, it seems a little bit like, wow, just having the switch gear seems like a really great thing. But then trying to build a smart platform for every other device is like, are you doing two separate things here when you're manufacturing something and trying to do software? So I guess what I would say, or I would ask is, could your device, if it had this smart capability, be capable of just receiving from any gateway, any home gateway, for example, some sort of a, almost like a CTA 2045, some kind of a demand or control request that it could then execute when integrating with that gateway? And I ask specifically because Community Energy Labs is developing that. So we have a machine learning algorithm that prioritizes flexibility with different types of loads in a home in order to optimize when, or maybe not a home, but like a school or a building, in order to optimize when that building is using energy. So I'm wondering if your device is capable of what kind of communication protocols do you use, and what types
Yeah,
of
so
commands is it capable of receiving?
yeah, so we're still very early in the development of this software. So right now we have an app that's kind of in its beta version for being able to track your charging session, so you can see how much energy you're using, how much energy your dryer is using. You can see when your dryer's done. You can see when your electric vehicle's done, so you get these notifications. And then you have a dashboard to be able to see what's on and how much power each is drawing.
Mm-hmm.
Down the line, we're working on integrating different protocols and ways to respond to demand. And it doesn't necessarily have to be our software. I mean, we can integrate with other softwares. That's the really beautiful thing about software, is we would be able to integrate with different types of protocols or different types of softwares that maybe someone else is building that really helps with demand and can execute with response to demand. So it does make us very flexible. Another thing that's, I think, really important is being able to understand some of this data of when appliances are being run, what their, what exactly their waveform looks like, and these different times that they're being used is really interesting for utilities, and being able to maybe shut off if the grid's being a little bit overloaded. That's really beneficial for utilities, and being able to even meter and understand, here's how much energy this dryer is using today, or here's how much energy these electric cars or water heaters are using. So yeah, did I answer your question?
No, but I checked in with you on LinkedIn, and we can talk about it
Okay.
offline. I think I'm just sort of like, what communication protocols are native to your device, the actual physical device, and how can you actuate a behavior in terms of turning off the switch remotely, for example? Is that possible right now? Or it sounds like what I heard you answering is, hey, this is on our roadmap. We need that functionality, but you've got an actual physical piece of gear that has an important job to do. And it sounds like you're rightfully focused on your near-term objective, which is, helping people actually integrate these electricity consuming devices without having to upgrade their panel. So that sounds like a smart focus, and let's talk offline.
Thank you. Sounds good.
Tom Cabot did a great question about maybe being able to provide to both. So let me unmute you, and Tom, you can ask your question.
Thanks, Panama. Can you hear me, Spencer?
Yeah. Hey, Tom.
Yeah. So about that question, somebody asked about, can you run a heat pump water heater and a heat pump space heater off the same NeoCharge? I was wondering, maybe it would work already off the shared car charging version, but I think you've got maybe a 3 amp capability on one side with that stays on and won't trigger it to flip over. If that were up around 5 amps, then you could be putting 1200 watts to one device or the other, which would keep most heat pump water heaters going on their heat pump mode. And for most hours of the year would keep a heat pump space heater also on its regular heat pump mode. So, I'm just wondering, you have maybe a capability to move up that amperage limit on a shared plug where it flips over from one to the other.
So was your question, was it to see if we can change the amperage of the device, or was it to, what exactly was your question?
So my first question is there a 3 amp limit on what goes through the, the main plug before the sub is cut off?
Yeah, so in terms of the lower limit, there isn't a lower limit, but there is the upper limit. So, if you have 40 amps that you can use on the circuit and you wanted to use 5 amps and 5 amps, neither of them are going to get shut off. They can both run at the same time. So yeah, basically we're
see
just
it.
going to make sure you don't go over. But if you want to run them both at the same time and they're underneath what that power, how much power you can actually draw from the outlet, then that's fine. So you could technically run 2 cars at 20 amps, or you could run, you know, a heat pump and a space heater at 30 amps and 10 amps, or however it's distributed. You can use them both at the same time as long as you don't go over what the outlet's rated for.
Right. So it sounds like you can now run a heat pump, a whole house heat pump, and a heat pump water heater, say a 30 amp
Correct.
and a 40 amp on a 40 amp shared circuit, and it would just cut off whatever is the sub when the total got over 40.
Correct. Yeah, spot on.
All right, thanks.
Yeah.
Right on. Great question. From Steve Gutman, do you have a list of quote unquote compatible heat pump water heaters, ones that have been tested to ensure power cycling does not have any issues?
So to be honest, we're still working on testing with heat pump water heaters. As I was explaining earlier, you know, we did really start off with electric vehicles, and this is kind of a newer path that we're going as well. We do think it's very important, so we're open to testing these out. And I'm sure some of you guys have water heat pumps and maybe even space heaters that we could even test it out on, and I'd be willing to work with you guys on seeing if it is compatible with your specific model, and possibly even working with Ream to see if we can test with you guys. So we're open to suggestions and solving this together.
Great. Yeah, Spencer, we got the 3 major heat pump water heater manufacturers in our coalition. So let's work on connecting you with the right folks in those organizations. Start doing some testing with them.
That'd be awesome.
Question from Rebecca. Can this be used in multifamily properties? And if so, how many units?
Yeah, so we are exploring multifamily properties. That we do see that there's a major gap with charging and installations for these multifamily dwellings. But the only downside of our product right now is that we are only indoor rated, so we can't be put outdoors. So depending on what the setup is, let's say if it's outdoors, our product wouldn't work. But if there is an indoor setup, our product would work great for those individuals in those multi-unit dwellings.
Great, thank you. Yeah, and Rebecca was asking specifically about EVs. So great. Okay. Bill Lyons, you got a great question. I'm going to unmute you and allow you to just ask it directly to Spencer. So Bill, can you unmute yourself?
Are you there?
Yep,
Yeah, and
you are.
A lot of it has been asked and answered by another questioner. I just wanted to confirm you do have a way to run a partial load and a partial load, and that has been answered. The ability to limit one, how is that handled? Maybe you can describe that a little bit. Is there a program that's you're programming it to say 10 to this and then shut off entirely, or only shuts off entirely when you one circuit entirely when you exceed the maximum? So if you could just run through some scenarios with that, that might help.
Yeah.
But then the last question, are there any auxiliary switches, just like dry contact, that you'd be able to use to say this, any kind of programming, or even right now just says this one's shutting off soon, or less of a step than the programming questions? And do you have any dry switches that might be used? Thanks.
Just to clarify, by dry switches, do you mean manual switches?
I was thinking more like a reed switch or something like that. Could be any kind of thing that would be able to send a signal that one plug is going to be turned off soon, or that the user could use like something like that.
Yeah, so
a dry contact switch.
Okay, yeah. So basically the way our product works, as I said, there's a primary, there's a secondary. The primary isn't going to be shut off, but the secondary, when something does get overloaded, we have the ability to basically switch off in there, and then it'll turn off the secondary side. So one side can be shut off, one side's always live. That's how it's generally works. We do have functionality within our app right now where if you're across your house and you do want to turn off the whatever's on the secondary side, you can remotely click, okay, I'm gonna pause the charging on my electric car. Boom, you just paused it. That'll shut that outlet off for now until you undo it, then it'll go back to charging. Did that answer your question?
Yes, I think so. I think I'm assuming there's an owner's manual or something available that we can find?
Correct, yeah.
Excellent. Thank you.
Wonderful. I'm going to let Jim Lutz ask a question. He's one of the people bringing the 110 volt heat pump water heaters to market, but there has been a couple questions in here about will this presentation be available, and the presentation and the recording will be available in the members section of the Building Decarbonization Coalition's website. And so members are able to access both the recording and the presentation. And if you're not yet a member, you can go to buildingdecarb.org/join to be able to find out how to be a member. Jim Lutz, you are unmuted. If you could please ask your question.
Yeah, this has to do with the 120 or 110 volt heat pump water heater. The idea is the sort of situation Tanya was talking about where you only have 110 volt circuits where you want to put your water heater, and you want to do it without bringing an electrician, so you don't really you want your water heater to be able to be plugged into a shared circuit, which is allowed by code, but that means something else on the circuit could come on at the same time, like a freezer in the garage or something like that. And you wouldn't necessarily know about it if it's an appliance that you're not working with. You wouldn't know that the circuit had been tripped. So the idea, and this would be different than a splitter where you're taking an existing outlet and sharing it with two loads. But could you sense when the voltage on that circuit, where you can't see what the other load is, but all of a sudden it turned on, the voltage probably has a transient drop before the circuit breaker or fuse blows. Could you detect that quick enough to turn off the heat pump water heater before the circuit breaker or the fuse blows?
Yeah, so the cycle time on our smart splitters is quicker than the time it takes for your breaker to switch. So we would actually shut off before the breaker is going to flip. That's how it's designed in terms of the timing. Does that answer your question?
Halfway.
Yeah. And then
the other half is, can you sense the maybe a voltage drop or something on the outlet and realize that it's going to trip, within the next half second or something?
Yeah. So we do. That's a good question. I would actually have to think about that a little bit and talk with my CTO about the exact mechanics of that. But I can get back to you on that and separately offline.
That'd be great. Yeah. Thanks.
Great.
Thank you.
And Spencer,
appreciate it.
Could you actually go back? Could you go back to the slide with your contact information?
Yeah.
Just so folks can. It's a beautiful picture you had up there.
Yeah.
And, but I think folks are going to want to follow up with you. Elena
Definitely.
had a great question. She said, It looks like EVs will be battery storage and that electricity can flow from the car to the building when there's a power outage. Will the splitter accommodate the reverse flow?
Yeah, so we do think vehicle to home and vehicle to grid is a really important thing. Right now, from what I understand, and you guys can correct me if anyone knows, but that's not available yet in the US. Our device doesn't accommodate for that yet as of right now. To do that, you would really need an inverter. and we do not have an inverter within our device. But that is something there is a lot of potential for, and we have seen some different kind of studies being done for that and pilots. So it is a really interesting space, and there could be some potential in the future for us to do that.
Nice, fantastic. And then from Larry Strain again, what if the appliances you want to split are really far apart? Can you hardwire them? 220 extension cords can't be too long.
Yeah, so we have, we've seen this many times, and it's something that we're working on enabling for different people. Right now, our smart splitter we've designed it specifically for it to be plug and play. So especially right now, it's really relevant because if, for example, Amazon Home Services, they're not sending out any electricians right now because of COVID. And with our device, it would be plug and play. Whereas right now, if we had this hardwired solution, it still would require an electrician. There is definitely some potential for that. And we've seen some use cases, and it is really interesting. But right now, our device is mainly for plug and play purposes, so plugging directly into the outlet. But that is something that we're definitely exploring and that we're interested in.
Fantastic. Well, you've gotten a ton of interest. You're able to keep 107 folks on the call, deep into the questions. So I think you're on to something here, Spencer. But you already knew that. I want to thank you for the presentation. Thank you for being an entrepreneur and stepping out there and taking the risk on a critical issue facing our industry. Spencer's information's up there on the screen. I hope folks that have these great questions and want to work with Spencer on the next generation of their splitters, please contact him, reach out, and Spencer, let's work together on moving your product even more. So thank you all for joining today on today's webinar. Come back in 2 weeks to hear about Rheem's ProTerra, and keep up the good work out there, everybody in the building decarbonization community. We're making some really incredible progress in California and across the country, and so let's keep it up, and we're all going to achieve our goals together, particularly with great technology like NeoCharge. So thank you very much, everybody. Thank you, Spencer. Have a great day, everybody.
Thank you. Thank you, Panama. Thank you, everyone. Feel free to email me.